Everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I am absolutely delighted to be talking with comics creator Tony McMillen. Tony, you are the creator of a book that is coming soon, I believe, from Mad Cave, and that is Attaboy. And I know you also for Lumen and Serious Creatures as well. So glad to have you on to talk a little bit about your creating.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be on. And yeah, I've done a bunch of books, but Attaboy is I think poised to be my mainstream debut. It's going to come out through a big publisher and it's going to be in like stores everywhere. So I'm very excited about that.
Yes, yeah, and I've seen, just kind of the things that have been shared online, but it also looks really great.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I
Hmm.
actually did it. I self-published it about 3 years ago, and I'm still very proud of it. A lot of times, I think a lot of people you make some work, and maybe a few years later, you're kind of not so jazzed about it, or you're like, oh, I would change this or that. But I'm pretty happy with Attaboy still. So I'm really happy that more people will see it potentially.
Cool, cool. So not a lot of changes from the original format to now, would you say?
No, luckily the editor, we looked through it, but we added like 4 commas. I think I added one sound effect. It's kind of the book, and which I'm really happy with because yeah, again, I kind of figured this for 3 years it's been done in my mind, it's been complete, and so I really was happy. It wasn't like a bunch of changes. It's still creator owned too, so I did have the final say, which is very important to me. So yeah, if you liked Attaboy before, guess what? You're gonna like it still probably. If
Hmm.
you never heard of it, well, here we go. Here's your chance.
Yep, this is the time to hear about it and check it out.
Yeah.
For folks that are just now hearing about it, any kind of teaser, tagline, kind of thing that you'd like to share about it?
Yeah, totally. The book opens with the narrator saying, "There's a video game from when I was a kid that no one else seems to remember," and that's kind of the intro of the book. And so, what's cool about the book is it's sort of it's a comic book disguised as an instructional manual for a video game that may or may not have ever existed. So you get a little bit of Mandela effect stuff. You also
Hmm.
get a bunch of cool Mega Man-esque NES classic like action adventure stuff. But then there's also this kind of personal angle and it becomes almost autobiographical and I think it works on a lot of different levels all at the same time. And it's in a weird way, it's a extremely personal book, despite there being tons of mechazoids destroying each other and really colorful superhero action. I think that's why the book works. It tackles some serious stuff in a very playful way, which is the way I usually like to approach that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. It's cool. And I
Thanks.
love how video games, science fiction, I love how you can kind of play with reality with those stories, but then also speak to parts of reality in ways that are still entertaining and kind of friendly in a way.
Yeah, I very much agree. I love allegory and I love it's one of those things where if you don't broach something directly, I think sometimes it makes people relax a little bit and maybe they're a little more open to some difficult ideas or confrontational ideas because it's not being shoved in their face per se.
Hmm.
It's there for them if they want it and they can also disregard it if they just don't pick up on it or they don't want to. They can just engage with the work in a surface level and that's fine too. But I usually kind of like that and I think I've been maybe touched mostly by art the deepest when I wasn't when it was kind of veiled a little bit or there's an allegorical level to it. I just think it's kind of a nice Trojan horse way of doing things sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. As an author, as a creator, how did you know that comics were the space where you wanted to share stories like this?
Um, I sort of denied it for years because basically, I think a lot of people, I always like to draw. I love drawing. I've always loved comic books, and I kind of like, I didn't think I was good enough because I think a lot of people, you have a level of taste, but then your level of craft isn't up to your level of taste. And so I've written prose novels, and I kept on making an excuse to have some sort of drawings in the novel because I like Kurt Vonnegut and Kurt Vonnegut's done that. I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I'll just
Hmm.
do a few drawings here and there, and more and more, I was like, well, this story would be better if it was all just drawings. And I was like, well, it's a comic book. If I do that, then it will reveal how terrible of an artist I truly am. And eventually, I was like, I just gotta go with it. And
Yeah.
it was almost instant. I was like, well, this feels like a much more natural fit to me because a lot of the stories I like to tell. The visual component is really important to them. So
Hmm.
basically, I feel like I should have been doing this 10 years before I did start doing it. But of course, it all worked out. I think, being older and having a little more patience and
Sure, sure.
life experience all fed into it being a better being a better cartoonist. But it's just so funny to me. Like, it took so long for me to go. I'll just do the things I really want to do.
Yep.
No one will stop me except for myself.
That is how it works sometimes, right? Totally how it
Yeah.
works. Yeah. So in addition to the visual, is there kind of a general thread to your work? Is there kind of storytelling that compels you most?
I kind of done a few different things, but I will say, my actual style of cartooning, my actual drawing style is kind of different, and I think that that unites all of it. I draw with a pilot parallel pen, which is a chisel tip pen,
Hmm.
and my line, my mark making is, it's fairly unique. You could definitely go like, okay, here's 8 people I think you're influenced by, and I'd probably go, yeah, that's true. But I think you throw them together, and it has its own unique look. So even though I've done different subject matter and I've done different types of storytelling, like my book Serious Creatures is a more literary book. It's about the history of special effects, and
Hmm.
it's almost like
Hmm.
Boogie Nights, but about like special effects guys. And so there's literally, I was like, the challenge in that one was, there's going to be a lot of people talking. This is 22 pages of people talking. How could that be visually interesting? Whereas Attaboy, well, it's a robot fighting a giant mechazoid, and there's an explosion, and there's this. Visually, that's pretty easy to get across. But then the challenge there was, well, how do I get some of the deeper subtext across to the reader, what I'm trying to, convey to them? But I think the uniting force is that the way I draw, it's kind of hard not to realize that's the same guy. It's a pretty distinct style, for better or for worse. It's kind of like when Bob Dylan sings a song, um, it's Bob Dylan, or like
Right.
Neil Young. That voice is that voice, and I think I have that, which is nice. I think because my favorite kind of artists, for better or for worse, they have a very distinct style, and there's room to grow and there's room to change. But end of the day, you go that's that person. I know that person. That's that sound. That's that look.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Any particular folks along the way that have been supportive collaborators, kind of people in the journey that have been voices for you?
Well, I basically worked almost entirely by myself, but there have been
Hmm.
tons of supportive artists and people who I look up to and who I'm friends with. And I'll say, like, some people I consider my actual friends, like Jesse Lonergan is
Hmm.
a friend of mine, but he's also a huge influence, and just a cartoon I think is really doing great work consistently. And before he kind of he did Hedra through Image and stuff like that. He lived in the same area I did, and I had covered him for a newspaper, and we became buddies. I was kind of always like, me and my wife would just both remark like, why isn't he bigger? Like, he's so good. These comic books he does are incredible, and he kept getting better and better. And then all of a sudden he got bigger. He like it all worked out. I was like, oh, this is great. It's actually happening.
Yeah.
And I was relieved too, because I was like, I always wondered if one of my friends hit it big, would I be super jealous? And luckily I was like, no, I was like super stoked for him, and that was really a nice relief. So he's somebody I always look to, and in Attaboy, there's even a 2-page spread which I took one of his layouts from Hedra, just the way the panels were. I was like, I'm gonna basically do a riff on this, and he caught it right away. He's like, that's yeah, yeah, that's you. And I was like, I'll give you a thank you at the end of the book. So he's a guy who definitely artistically, um I think I'm not exactly directly influenced by what he does, but more like he keeps on thinking of new creative ways to problem solve, or to get stories across, and so it makes me just go, what can I do? And
Hmm.
it won't be the same, but it's just the idea of doing something really innovative. And I think what he does really well is that his work is experimental, you could say that, but it's playful.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
never homework, and that's what I would hate to have something be a real, like, to be a difficult chore for someone to, per se. Maybe you put a little work into it, but make it a fun exercise if it's not the usual thing. And I think he does that. And I try to do that too. Another guy is Dave Baker. Dave Baker,
Oh yeah.
yeah, and Dave's like great creator. He's an awesome guy too, and he's a guy who I knew back in Tucson, Arizona. He used to work at a shop I used to go to, and he was always a really creative guy then. I loved his art style, and through the years we kind of kept in touch every few years, and he's always willing to give me advice with the industry itself, and because
Hmm.
he's kind of seen a lot of angles I have not, and he hooked me up with a lawyer to look at the contract I signed and stuff. He's great like that, and he's also super. Dave's a really knowledgeable guy, and he's also really enthusiastic. And like, you can tell in his comics, he loves comic books. He
Hmm.
loves pop culture history, um, and I think that's really contagious. And so talking to him on the phone or seeing him in person, I feel like a real spark when I speak with him. It makes me feel really excited about what to do next. So that's a big guy, but I'm really lucky. Everyone like there's the cartoonist kayfabe Ringside Seats is a Facebook group I'm part of,
Hmm.
and Eli Schwab who runs that, great dude. And every time I've seen him in person, and like they're super excited about comic books, and it's fun to share work with them and see their work too, and kind of go back and forth. So I've slowly have amassed a sort of community, I think, of peers.
Love it, love it. Yeah, and those are some of my favorite people. I had Eli on a couple of months back. Dave's been on twice. Jesse Lonigan, we actually just did a second talk about a week ago, and it was
Oh,
focused on
cool.
Hedra and that wordless work that he does. So very cool. And yeah, those influences, great influences to have, and folks around you.
Yeah, I recommend anyone check out any of their books and you'll be blown away. Like it's all incredible work and they're all growing and changing. Like I'm a big like I love pop culture and I love little pockets of history. Like people I love grunge and Seattle rock happened. I always wondered what it would be like to be part of a scene.
Hmm.
And I guess in a weird way, part of a very small scene. It's spread across the country and it's full of different people, but people roughly the same age trying to do comics in a weird way. And it's interesting to be kind of finally part of it. And it feels like sometimes it feels like nothing. It feels like, oh no, and then everyone's like, no, there's a connection here between
Yeah,
all these little pieces, and
definitely.
we all know each other. And yeah.
That's cool. That's very cool. So if I want to follow your work, if I want to find out more about you and Attaboy, where would be the places that I would go?
Well, luckily, for some reason, no one has my name, so there's no numbers attached to my name online. If you look up Tony McMillen with the spelling, I'm the Instagram, I'm the .com, I'm the Facebook. But basically, if you find my website, it also has links to my Etsy shop. I sell almost all my comic books through Etsy, and that's inspired by Michel Fife. And Michel Fife is another huge influence artistically, but also his model of doing comics. And so he had an Etsy shop. I was like, I'll try an Etsy shop, and that's where I sell my comics. And you can find all my stuff there, and even some stuff like I did a Friday the 13th bootleg comic book, and that's available
Hmm.
there and
Hmm.
stuff. But luckily, yeah, just my name, Tony McMillan. For some reason, I'm the only guy in the world with that name. You can find me, which
You
is
are the
nice.
guy. You are the
Yeah.
guy. Um, I was also going to ask, I know we have Attaboy on the way, but anything that you'd like to mention in terms of next creative steps that you'd like to take, any
Oh,
vision for what's next?
yeah, definitely. So I'm hoping that Attaboy does gangbusters, and then Mad Cave. If they're into it, maybe they publish one of my other books. Probably the one I would recommend is Serious Creatures. I've done 12 issues of it, and I'm working on the last six, collecting them to a trade. So now there'll be two trades of that. Um, and that's sort of like I said before. It's sort of my literary book. It's about special effects through the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and how computer effects kind of came over and destroyed that industry. And it's the rise and fall of various creative people. And that's done. But actually, the work I'm working on now is a sequel to Lumen, my first comic book. And the new one's going to be called Destroying Angel Lumen. And this is like, yeah, after doing, I finished Serious Creatures 7 through 12 recently, and now it's nice to just draw action, adventures, superhero crazy stuff. And Lumen's about a world of endless night, and on this night world, there's these fungi, these giant mushroom monsters, and the hero is this guy with a suit and a lantern, and he's fighting all these creatures. And it's very Metroidy and kind of Dune-esque, and
Mhm.
it's got its own thing going. But the sequel, I mean, I'm like 30 pages in. I'm really happy with the work, and I think when that comes out, if you were like missing my action adventure stuff from Serious Creatures and you want some more of the Attaboy Lumen flavor, this is good. To me, in my mind, I'm trying to do what Road Warrior did for Mad Max. I want to sort of like up the ante, and like you like Lumen. This is like Lumen Super Nintendo version. This is the bigger version of it, the bigger, harder, leaner, meaner version. So that's the next thing that I got going.
Awesome, awesome. Well, looking forward to it. I
Thanks.
like the imagination, the creativity that comes in, and glad that you started sharing drawings with the world and
Yeah.
leaned into that. Very good, very good.
Thanks. Yeah, it worked out okay, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Excited that Attaboy is coming from one of my favorite publishers. They don't pay me to say this, but I've really enjoyed Matt Cave stuff over the past few years. So excited
Yeah.
to see that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think they're really doing it. They have all kinds of cool license stuff and original stuff, and it feels like I feel like it's a really lucky spot for me to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tony, glad to have you back anytime to talk about Lumen, series creatures, other projects as they come to be, and wishing you great success with Attaboy.
Oh, thanks, man. And I would love to come back. It'd be a blast.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Thanks again.